Jamaica's prime minister is caught in a political whirlwind, right? And we're diving right into the legal arguments swirling around him. We've got this article from The Gleaner, and we'll be dissecting all the back and forth about financial disclosures. Like, is further investigation necessary? What's going on?
It's fascinating, really. This
Yeah.
deep dive takes us into a power struggle, examining that fine line between respecting the legal processes in place, but also making sure those in power are held accountable.
So catch us up. What's the main issue happening in Jamaica right now?
Okay, so it all starts with this investigation by Jamaica's Integrity Commission. They're looking into Prime Minister Holness for potential illicit enrichment. Now, they didn't actually find conclusive evidence against him, but one investigator decided to refer the case to the Financial Investigation Division. It's called the FID. They want a more in-depth probe.
That's unusual, though, right? Especially since the Integrity Commission didn't find anything concrete. This referral must have caused quite a stir.
Oh, absolutely. It ignited this whole debate about the Integrity Commission's obligation. Do they have to clear the Prime Minister's name immediately, or does the investigator's referral for further investigation hold weight? You see? So the article presents opinions from two very well-respected King's Counsel. They're like Jamaica's top legal experts, and they've got very different takes on this whole thing.
This is where it gets really interesting, right? Because we're talking about a clash of legal titans here. Break it down for us. What are their arguments? And what legal precedents are they using to support their case?
All right, so on one side, we've got Andre Earl, KC. He says there's absolutely no legal grounds to force the Integrity Commission's hand here. He points to laws, specifically Section 6.3 of the Integrity Commission Act, which basically shields the commission from political pressure. They answer to the courts, and the courts alone.
So Earl is arguing that the Integrity Commission needs to be free from any kind of political influence.
Yeah, exactly. Now for the counter-argument. This is where Peter Champagne, KC, comes in. He says that once that report from the Integrity Commission reaches Parliament, it should be the end of it, especially when there are no findings of wrongdoing, which is the case here. In fact, he's quoted as saying, "The position cannot be that the entire process is held to ransom by the opinion advanced by any single individual whose mandate, in my respectful opinion, gives no authority at this point to refer any further inquiries to the FID." He's basically saying one investigator, even one from within the commission, can't just hold up everything.
It's two sides of the same coin, but the interpretations are so different, it makes you wonder if there's some legal nuance within the Jamaican system that could even allow for such different opinions.
That's a good point. I think this case really highlights a vulnerability within relatively new democracies. You can have these institutions that seem really strong, like Jamaica's Integrity Commission, but even a hint of political maneuvering can really shake the public's trust.
So we're looking at a real legal tug of war here. But it feels like this is more than just a legal debate, right? This cuts to the core of Jamaica's political landscape.
Absolutely. Goes way beyond the legal back and forth. It raises crucial questions about accountability, about transparency within Jamaican society as a whole.
And as if this legal battle wasn't enough, the Gleaner mentions that a constitutional expert has also entered the conversation. What's their perspective on this whole situation?
This is Dr. Lloyd Barnett. He's well respected in Jamaican constitutional law. He's urging caution, saying it's too early for either side to make pronouncements. He says the FID investigation needs to run its course.
So, a wait-and-see approach.
Kind of, but here's the thing. He also emphasizes that the Integrity Commission was completely within its right to refer the case to the FID. He's urging patience, but he's not downplaying how serious this referral is.
It's like he's walking a tightrope. He's acknowledging the situation is serious, but he's advocating for due process. We've got legal experts going head-to-head. We have a constitutional expert urging restraint. This has clearly gone way beyond a simple financial disclosure issue.
Oh, for sure. This scenario could have huge ramifications. It's not even about Prime Minister Holness himself at this point. This is about the potential erosion of public trust. And not just in individual leaders, but in the very systems meant to hold those leaders accountable.
And usually when that trust starts to erode, it creates space for other players to step in, individuals or even entire groups who might see an opportunity to try and shape the narrative.
And you're talking about the interesting arrival of a certain church group into this whole thing, right?
Exactly. It's not every day you see a church group wading into a political scandal. What's their stance here, and what does it say about the climate in Jamaica right now? So we've got the Jamaica umbrella group of churches, the JUGC. They've really stepped into the middle of things. What's their take on this situation? What does it tell us about what's going on in Jamaican politics right now?
Well, they're calling on lawmakers to, stick to the best practices, make sure the Integrity Commission's oversight is totally objective, completely above board. It's a call for higher ethical standards, and not just for the Prime Minister, but for everyone in a position of power.
It's like they're saying, listen, we're not just watching this happen. We expect more from our leaders.
Exactly. And they don't stop there. They also want all parliamentarians to sign that leadership code of conduct, the one some have been kind of hesitant about.
So this isn't just about the Prime Minister then. The JUGC is aiming for accountability across the whole system. It's a bold move to put the focus on the lawmakers themselves. Why do you think they're taking this approach?
I think it really reflects the state of public trust in Jamaica right now. The JUGC's involvement shows that people want a more ethical government, a real commitment to transparency. It highlights a gap between what citizens expect and what they're actually seeing from their leaders.
It's an interesting development for sure, but how does this impact the legal arguments? Does the church's involvement change the focus of this whole debate?
That's tough to say. On the one hand, it definitely adds a moral layer to everything, on top of the legal and political stuff. But on the other hand, the legal battle is still going on. Those opinions from the King's Counsel and Dr. Barnett, they're still important. I guess the GUGC adds a new kind of pressure, though. It makes lawmakers think beyond just the letter of the law. Now they have to think about public perception, how their actions look in terms of leadership.
So it's not just about what's legal. It's about optics, the public image, whether people believe their leaders are accountable. It's a good reminder that even with a legal system, any democracy still depends on public trust.
Absolutely. This whole situation, from the investigation to the legal opinions to the church getting involved, it shows just how complicated it is to balance power, accountability, and trust in a democracy.
See, this is what I find fascinating. We're seeing a clash of values and priorities playing out right in front of us. There's the legal framework focused on procedure and due process, but at the same time, there's this demand for accountability, ethical behavior, which often goes beyond what's strictly stated in the law.
You got it. This deep dive has taken us right to this balancing act. How do you make legal structures work while still making sure the public trusts those structures?
Like watching a game of chess, but in real life. Every move, every word, every argument could completely change the course of Jamaican politics.
That's a great analogy. And just like chess, it's hard to say who's going to come out on top. What we do know is that this is a situation worth paying attention to, not just for the outcome, but for what it tells us about how democracies actually function.
And as we keep going with this deep dive, we'll keep looking at this dance between legal arguments, political maneuvering, and the all-important public trust. There's still more to cover, so we'll pick it up in the next part of our deep dive. So we're back, and this whole thing in Jamaica, this financial disclosure issue, it's really become something much bigger, hasn't it? It's amazing to see the public pressure ramping up alongside the legal arguments. The Jamaica umbrella group of churches really threw a wrench in things.
Yeah, it really shows you how much context matters, even with the law. Public perception can be just as powerful as any legal detail.
Totally. And speaking of public perception, there was this one detail from the Gleaner article that really jumped out at me, that unsigned code of conduct.
Oh, right. Yeah, it's almost ironic you've got this huge debate going on about Prime Minister Holness and his finances, but then you have these lawmakers who haven't even signed this code of conduct that the Integrity Commission put forward.
It's like a whole other story happening at the same time. On one hand, there's a microscope on the Prime Minister's financial dealings, but then you have this group of lawmakers who seem hesitant to commit to a code of conduct meant to improve transparency.
Makes you wonder, right? What are people supposed to think when they see lawmakers dragging their feet on something as basic as a code of conduct, especially when they're so focused on the Prime Minister's own transparency?
It almost seems counterproductive. They're arguing about all these legal procedures, but then they hesitate to embrace a mechanism that would actually improve ethical conduct within their own ranks.
It brings up a really important point about democracies. The people in power, they shouldn't just be subject to scrutiny. They have to actively show they're committed to transparency and accountability. They set the example,
That's what the JUGC seems to be saying, right? That call for all parliamentarians to sign the code, It puts the pressure on. It says public trust isn't just about surviving an investigation, it's about actively demonstrating ethical leadership.
And that brings up a huge question. Who is ultimately responsible for making sure there's accountability in a democracy? Is it just institutions like the Integrity Commission? Or do citizens need to be more active, more vigilant even?
It's something to think about. This whole deep dive, from a seemingly straightforward investigation to legal debates, political maneuvering, and now public pressure, it shows just how quickly things can change. And sometimes it's not the court of law that shapes a nation's future, but the court of public opinion.
We might not have all the answers, but one thing's for sure. This deep dive into Jamaican politics shows just how interconnected law, power, and public trust really are, and how those dynamics are constantly shifting.
It reminds us that democracy depends on strong institutions, absolutely. But it also depends on informed citizens, people willing to ask tough questions and dig deeper into the stories that matter. And on that note, until next time, keep asking those questions, and we'll keep on diving deeper into the stories that shape our world.